to define the word on the front of this book, wealth. What is your definition of wealth?
Stephen just asked Morgan to define the word literally printed on the cover of his book, and Morgan's answer isn't what you'd expect from a finance guy. He splits the whole idea of money into two words most people use interchangeably.
Well, I made up these definitions in the book, so these are just my things that I made up. But I defined rich as you have enough money to buy what you want, to pay for your mortgage, to make your car payment, to go out to dinner with your friends. You have money in the bank. Wealth, I think, is very different. Wealth is money that you did not spend, and maybe you will not spend. So wealth is hidden. It's the money that you didn't spend on a car. It's the money that you didn't spend on a big house. You didn't spend on jewelry. And that's really important because wealth that's saved up, the unspent money, is what gives you independence and autonomy and just the ability to wake up every morning and do whatever you want with your life. And so I think separating that is really important because when most people say, I want to be a millionaire, what they actually mean is I want to spend $1 million. That's what they mean. And when I think about being a millionaire, I think it's you have $1 million that you're not going to spend. And that because you're not going to spend it, you have this giant cushion that will give you independence and autonomy. And so you can wake up tomorrow and say, I can do whatever the hell I want today. I can work for who I want. I can work for as long as I want. I can retire when I want. The world is yours. Like every bit of savings that you have is a piece of your future that you own. You're just buying your time in the future so that it's yours and you can do whatever you want with it. And that to me has always been the goal. There's a quote from Charlie Munger where he says, I never wanted to become rich. I just wanted to become independent. And that when the first time I read it, it was like, that's me too. That's what I want. I don't want a Lamborghini. I don't want a mansion and a yacht. I want to wake up every morning and to say, whatever I want to do today, it's mine. Nobody's going to tell me where to work, when to work, what to do. It's all me. And to me, for not just work, but for your family life, for your health, for your mental sanity, there's nothing more important than that.
So that's the theory. Now Morgan gets personal, because he says this exact definition of wealth is basically a description of his own father. And it wasn't always something he understood or even respected.
It sounds like you're talking about your father.
My dad, he has such an interesting background. My mother too. Their background is so crazy. And I didn't realize how crazy it was until I was an adult. The early part of my childhood, when my parents were in school, we were very poor. My parents were students living off of student loans and grants. We had no money. And then my dad became a doctor when I was 12 or 13 and things changed. We were not rich, but like things got very comfortable. And what was really important is that the frugality that my parents had to have when they were poor stuck with them, even after they started making a little bit of money.
They didn't buy a Lamborghini.
No. We grew up in a very modest house. It was a nice house, and we took some decent family vacations, but we always lived well below our means, way below our means.
Did that confuse you? Because you must have known that your dad had the money.
Yes, particularly when I was probably 16, 17, and I could learn how much does a doctor make? You can go look it up and figure it out. And then it was I definitely looked down on my parents at that age.
That resentment didn't last forever, though. Morgan says it took until he was in his late 20s for the whole thing to finally click. And it happened when he watched what his dad's frugality actually blew.
And then it really clicked about 10 years ago. This is not that long ago. So my dad is an ER doctor, which is one of the most stressful jobs that you can imagine. It's literally people dying in your arms every day. And he did this for 20 years. And after 20 years of doing this, night shifts, children dying in your arms literally every week, he said he had enough. It was a lot. He put in his dues. He did it for 20 years and he said, I'm done. I'm going to retire. And the reason he could do that is because he had saved up so much money. He was living well below his means. They had a very high savings rate. The moment he woke up and said, I want to be done, he was done. And that was it. And if you contrast that with so many other people, including some of his colleagues, who were also burnt out at age 60, who were also burnt out by having people die in their arms for 20 years. They wanted to retire and they couldn't because they had the bigger house, because they had the nicer car that I thought that we should have had when we were growing up. And when they quit and moved on to their next phase of life, they got so much happier. And so it was this was 10 years ago. I was in my late 20s at this point. I was like, now I get it. He was frugal, he saved a lot, and that made him independent. And the independence made him happier than any car would have done.
So Morgan's dad is the extreme, high-end version of this idea. But right after, Stephen asks him to bring it down to earth. What does this actually mean for someone barely covering rent? Morgan's answer is the whole thesis in one line.
Let's speak then to 18-year-old Steve that was in that little room with the stack of these, what they call county court judgments and bailiffs and stuff, stack of letters on his desk. What advice, based on all you know about money and finance, can you give to somebody who is maybe, making $1,000, $1,000, $2,000 a month, covers their rent just about, doesn't have a lot of money left over? What is the best way to go from that position to a position of wealth, in your view?
I think one of the best ways to think about it at the lower levels, and I explained a little bit of this earlier, but to dig into it, is a lot of what's probably giving you stress in life is that you don't have control over what you're doing. And if you view every dollar of savings that you have as a bit of your future that you own and control, then I think that mindset can shift pretty dramatically. And it's like, that's the ticket out. The ticket out is not a nicer car. It's not a bigger house. It's not better clothes. The ticket out is independence. That's what's going to give you the better career. It's what's going to make you happier. It's what's going to make you healthier. And the only thing that's going to give you independence is having enough money saved up so that you can choose where you want to live, maybe even what job you want. You can choose at some point down the road when you retire. If you get sick, it's not just going to break you immediately. Having that independence is going to take more weight off your shoulders than anything else you can do in life.
Save money.
That's it.